Today, I want to talk to you about the cycle of grace. In John chapter 1, it says that from the fullness of Jesus, we have all received grace upon grace. When I've heard that, I've always just thought, yeah, Jesus gives us a lot of grace. But I've never thought about the cycle of grace that we experience when we know Christ. We're going to look at Hebrews chapter 4. It says, so then there remains a Sabbath rest for the people of God. For whoever has entered God's rest has also rested from his works as God rested from his. Then later on in the same chapter, verse 14, it says, let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. I've been reflecting a lot on that word grace and that word rest. And here in this passage it says that for those who believe in God, there is a Sabbath rest. What does that mean? How can we enter God's rest? And what does Sabbath rest have to do with believing in God, with being God's people? Because we can rest from our works when we rest in God's work, when we rest in what God has done for us on the cross, what Jesus has done for you and for me on the cross. When we look at that work and we say, it is finished. It was finished when Jesus died and when he rose again. We can rest from our works because we're no longer striving to prove ourselves, no longer trying to show that we're good enough and that we measure up, because we know that God's work is enough. If we believe in the work that Jesus did on the cross, we can truly enter God's Sabbath rest, because we can rest from our works, trusting that God's work is enough. And when we have that kind of belief, here's what it says in Hebrews. It says, let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive grace and find grace to help us in time of need. So here's the crazy thing about it. What is God's work on the cross? It's grace. So our ability to rest is because of God's grace of giving us Jesus, of giving us the cross. And when we're truly resting in that gospel truth, in that grace, what do we have? We have freedom and confidence to approach the throne of God. And what is that throne called? It's called the throne of grace. And when we come to that throne, what do we receive? We receive grace to help in our time of need. And when we have grace, again, we realize that it's about God's work and not our work. And again, we're able to rest. And when we're resting, we have freedom to approach the throne. And when we approach the throne, what do we receive? Grace. And that grace allows us to rest, and that resting allows us to come to the throne, and that throne gives us more grace. And so it's this cycle of grace. It's never ending. And so from his fullness, we have truly received grace upon grace. May this encourage you. May you feel loved, and may you know God's grace more fully through this message.